Oh, that's
We're
good.
now
I've
recording.
not done. Yeah, look, you've got in the corner recording and live on Facebook. Excellent.
Blimey, technology does work.
Oh, I know. Look, we
Eh?
got there. Brilliant.
That's
Excellent.
it. That's the evening over and done with. I've accomplished it. I
Cool.
feel
And
brilliant.
you know, we've got this and Boris in half an hour. What more do we want? Let's be honest.
Yeah. So now I don't know what happens regarding people joining. Hopefully they should be able to click onto the live on Facebook button within Facebook, and that should work. We're up and running.
They can watch it back as well, can't they?
Yeah, so it's been recorded as well, so I will share it onto the page. But I will just assume that people can sort of hear and see us. Let's see if there's any buttons I can press to see if there's anything come up when.
Do you want me to look on my Facebook page as well?
So if there is anyone watching, if you can see the recording, if you can give us some sort of indication, because this is new ground for the pair of us. So
I'm going to like it, which makes it sound like I'm liking myself, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But then just seeing if anything comes up on yours.
No, I'm not getting anything coming up. But so I'll just assume that people can see it, and like I said, there will be recording anyway. So just introduce yourself to the group. We've had your bio that was posted on there, which gave us a bit of an outline. It's 17 years, been sort of practicing as a therapist and sleep coach.
Yes, exactly. So for me, obviously, thank you for having me, Helen Swain. For some of you know, I'm married to Carl Swain, who's currently with RASP. I have always delved into therapy, so for me it's been something that's been on and off. Some of it's been sort of business related, some of it child related, and so for me it's just always been a passion that's been there from the beginning. But in terms of what I do now currently, although yes, hypnotherapy, lots of different types of therapies, but I'm working alongside the PFOA as a coach, helping them out. I have a private practice as well, so I basically support those in need of help with anxiety, sleep issues. I often used to refer to it as kind of catching them before they fall, which I think is a nice way of putting it. When I used to do my classes, life before COVID, and life was quite very much on a one-to-one or a group basis, but seeing people in person. And actually it's changed over the last year. So for me, everything's online, and it's much more trauma based recently. So I would have always said I was fully anxiety based, and helping there, and I know that the two go hand in hand, but it seems to be much more trauma based of recent times. And probably I would say 70% of my client base is police officers, dipped in and out NHS, and I do quite a lot of work as well with families, so children, teenagers are struggling at the moment, so that's quite high on my kind of list of people that I work with. University students, so in terms of what I'm currently doing, PFOA work, coaching. I'm not doing so many live classes and things like that anymore. It seems to be much more one-to-one based. But working pretty much full time, doing this, which I wasn't before. I was very much part time, but actually the need's there now to give people the support. And it's an ever growing. We're sort of branching out and learning ourselves. So even as therapists, we're learning different ways. So I do tend to kind of go with the flow a bit and just see what happens week to week. Joys of being self-employed, I suppose.
So I've been doing a bit of research, and I've been following Graham Norton, and I just sort of ask questions of sort of my guests and whatever.
Can I get to pull Carl off the chair if I can do that?
Yeah, we've got the red chair set up.
Yeah.
So one of the way I'd like to start is just to find out a bit more about yourself. Growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your?
God, do you know what? This sounds a bit corny. What I really wanted was children. I've always very nurturing. I always loved being around, kids, and so obviously as I grew up, So for me, initially it was I wanted to teach. So I did nursery nursing, leaving school. Then I got into Greenwich University to go off and teach. But throughout that period, as a sort of young adult, I was passing out and wasn't very well, and they didn't really know what it was, and lots of different investigations went in. And as it transpires, they couldn't find what was wrong with me. So it knocked my confidence to leave home. So university wasn't an option for me at the time. So I went out to work. I did what everybody else did when they wanted to, move out of home. I met Carl when we were 16. So, we were very much together as a couple, and we both, I knew he wanted, he wanted police all along. It was, he was going into the police force. So he did some other jobs, did his A-levels, did some other jobs, and at 21 joined the police. And so for me, I just went out to work, worked in London, trained as a PA, worked for some law firms, did that sort of thing. And it was just a means to an end for me. I never enjoyed working. That sounds really awful, but I know I didn't. And I used to jump around every 6-8 months. I'd want a new job because I just got bored very easily. Not very good at sitting in an office, and I'm not a great employee in terms of my own. I like to be my own boss. So for me, it was that I just felt that I just needed to change all the time. So then, so I've veered off, haven't I, from what did I want to do? I wanted, as a child, going back, I wanted to be a midwife, probably after as a mid-20s midwife. But again, I'd gone to work, I didn't do my teacher training, my confidence was low. I wanted to go off and do that. Oh, noisy computer, sorry. But I didn't have the confidence to go to nursing college to do it. But at the back of my mind, I kept thinking, when I've had my children, maybe I'll go back and do that. Maybe I'll do it. So for me, marriage and kids was always really high on the list, because I was with Carl and we were really settled very quickly, which I know is lucky in life. So I just, at the back of my mind was the children all the time, and was very lucky to have them at sort of age 26, and then my priorities changed.
So looking back now, was there a specific turning point in your life that got you to go down the route of being a wellbeing coach and therapist?
Yeah, absolutely. So after I had both the girls, I started to train. I did baby massage. I trained in that. And I used to teach classes and run workshops, etc. with that. And I absolutely loved it, because I had struggled very seriously with postnatal depression after the girls. Really, it knocked me to the point where I struggled to leave the house. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. There was no help out there. I didn't go to the doctors because I just pretended all the time I was all right. Just kept saying, I know I'm all right, because my marriage was good, the kids were well behaved. There was no reason for me to not feel okay, but I didn't know why I didn't. So I trained in the baby massage because it was a very calming, nice environment to be in. And then it progressed on from there. So it opened my eyes to this lovely therapy world. I trained then in Massage in Schools program, which, because I became passionate when the girls went off to school, to help school age children. I think if we can reach and help them when they're young to understand, the way in which, if they're stressed and worried, can we have an early intervention there and other little coping techniques and things. And Massage in Schools program was the only thing really around at that time, but it was so difficult to get into schools to run it, to show them. People were, what do you mean kids are touching each other? They weren't. They were, but that was the general thing. So that's what completely threw me a curveball from having sat in an office for so long, as I say. And then from there it grew. But and again, most therapists know this, that you can struggle sometimes to earn money when you're doing little things like that. So you're doing small classes and groups and that. So we needed money. We had kids, and we wanted a lifestyle, and police officers don't earn a fortune. And so then I sort of went down a self-employed business route. So it was like, I can coach, I can still help people, but I'll do it in in a way of, sort of almost like life coaching, really.
Yeah.
So I went off in that direction, and then sort of then came across hypnotherapy, did my course. I can't even remember how many years ago. I've probably been mostly sort of full-time in this area for about 4.5 years, full-time in it. So it's not actually that long, but
Yeah.
I think everything before then kind of leads you down that path. Always helped out in the schools, always was there with their wellbeing programs and things like that. Forest schools, anything to get the kids out, to get them calm and, running around outside and stuff like that. So I've always had that, I suppose, in me.
Yeah.
But no, I would say the postnatal depression was my big
Okay. So
curveball.
switching hats now, and this is going to be the proverbial can of worms. What's it like being the wife of a police officer? What is that?
Well, look, these, I pointed these out earlier. I was like, I haven't got frown lines, I've got surprise lines. Surprise all the time. I think it's challenging. So for anyone out there, they'll understand that his job took priority all the time, and partly because I didn't have a set career. I think if I had come in with a very set career, we would have made that work, but we didn't. And so his career took priority. Everything I did, whether it was around the kids, family, whatever it was, fitted around him. And not only that, but obviously shift work, his moods, his movements within the police, what he wanted to go off to do, everything revolved around him, really. So, and what it's like. I've spoken to Juliet about this, and it is difficult when you're hearing what's happening through them, and you have to trust your other half that they're doing all they can to be safe and well looked after and all of those things. And then there's a reshuffle of something or other, or a shift that's changed, and it's just for you frustration because there's been no real communication with it. So I think you have to be adaptable, definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm not massively, so it has caused us problems over the years. And I would say there's certain departments he's been in that have been much harder to deal with than others. I'm very, very happy when he made the choice to stop frontline, SFOs. He knows that I'd had enough by then. It's hard, you go to bed and they're off on nights and you worry and you're permanently worrying in some way, but you don't realize it. You just get used to permanently worrying. And then I think when you've got kids and other responsibilities and other things in your life, that worry builds, and that's what causes you to feel a bit anxious and can cause other problems coming along with it. So I don't think it's an easy job.
No, and this is one of the things that I've mentioned it before in the group, that we don't pay enough attention to the support network around, whether it's police, whether it's ambulance, whether it's NHS, those people going out doing those jobs in whatever capacity, and it's the people behind. We don't appreciate what's going on at home, really, because we go out and then we come back and expect everyone to be right, and God forbid if you're ever involved in anything, having experienced all that sort of stuff, you try and protect your partner from that side of things, but then the flip side to that is that your partner's desperate to sort of talk about what's going on and get answers and just clarify things, but they don't want to burden the other person with it. So that's why I'm keen to sort of get the perspective from our support network, as it were.
I think for us, the reason it's worked is that Carl has always been quite open and honest with me. I've always said right from the beginning, however hard it is, I think I'd rather know what's going on than think something's going on that you're not telling me. I'm sure there are things he hasn't told me. I'm not stupid, but they haven't caused me any worry because I really genuinely don't know about them. But if there was an issue going on, if he had something happening at work, if heaven forbid, we speak to, and under the PFOA, speak to a lot of people who are under a misconduct of some sort, something going on. And the lack of communication is a massive issue. It's a massive cause for concern. And I think that in those instances, it's then that we need to sort of step in to give the spouse, whoever it is, partner, wife, husband, whatever, even older children, some clarification that it's not the police officer, the partner, that's holding back on them and not being honest. This is the way it works. There is no communication, really. It does take a very long time. And they're not trying to hold anything back from you. This is just the way it works. And unfortunately, there is no real procedure for you to get any answers until they're ready to give it to you. And that can be months or years. It's not a good system. It really, really isn't. And that's where I think, like yourself, the support charities, all of this come in. But the officer themselves, firstly has a responsibility, I think, to be honest with their partners, because that will sort of appease them slightly and help them feel a bit calmer, that maybe they know that if there is something to say, they will say it, so they're not constantly asking. And on the flip side of that, the officer doesn't want to come home and be constantly hounded by who said this and what's that happened and what did you speak to them and why haven't you pushed this, because they can't just send an email to a senior management and go, what's happening? No, what's the timeline? There is none.
So from your point of view, then, what would you want to see as part of support offered by the police or whatever emergency service you're in? What would help partners and family members?
I think, well, when there's an incident, I would like to think that some form of, like the family liaison or somebody was able to go to the homes of the person, the spouse, the partner, whoever it is, and be with them before the officer went home. Because I think that they need to understand that if there is an incident that's happened, and I've talked about this mainly because it's the world that Carl was in, there's a firearms incident, a shot's been taken, there's a big, long, time-consuming procedure that they have to go through before they get home. So I would like to think that somebody was there with them at home explaining this, allowing them to ask the questions, which probably can't be answered, but at least to explain that when that officer walks through that door, they're not hit by loads and loads and loads of questions and what's happened, where have you been, and why have you been so late, and why has your phone been off, and what do you mean someone's taken your phone and your laptop and your, this is all normal procedure. But at that point, when they go in through that house, they are exhausted, they feel awful, they might have been a fatality, whatever's happening, their head is not in the right space to be met by that. So I would like to think, first of all, there was somebody there, and there might be, and I might be speaking out of line, because then that might be a procedure that is in place, but it's not one that I've heard.
No.
And secondly, I think that support groups like this, even to have partners, older children, whatever it is, and I know that there's a big grey area that we have to be careful about, but just so that they can ask questions and speak to people who are going through something similar. And I don't mean a great big sort of moan club, but I mean someone who will just go, I've been there, I know how this affects you, I understand. And obviously I can do that in some part. I haven't been through, Carl having been through a misconduct, but I have supported officers and wives and husbands through this procedure. But there doesn't seem to be a link between the two. It seems to be very sided with the officer and what's happening, and not with the family. So for me, it would be something in place, whether it was a wellbeing support group, whatever it was, not just you and what you're doing. It needs to be much wider spread than that. That gave them a point of contact so that they could go, God, so when that person turns up, or when something happens, whatever it is, they're like, I know I can speak to this person, or I can look at this website and get some advice, or there's a support group at 2:00 tomorrow. Do you know what? Just whatever it is, there needs to be somebody there to support them, because in the end, it will only support the officer. Because
and I come from the sort of the belief that if the person you're talking to has got that lived experience, that credibility, then that's going to be far more reassuring than, I say, for instance, if I turned up on someone's doorstep and, you know, and was speaking to sort of partners of a police officer, I wouldn't fully appreciate the feelings that they got through, because I've still got, you know, being a retired police officer, I've still got that sort of police mentality.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to sort of empathise with them. So that's why I'm keen to involve, you know, the family within the group, because, you know, they are the biggest peer support group that
Yeah.
we need to sort of
Yeah.
nurture, really, and give them the confidence and the backing needed.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when we both worked on a welfare support program, and I've got to say the vast majority of calls, it's all about the family support. The family support is the most important bit. If that's not there, then you know you're going to have trouble getting that
Yeah.
person into a good place.
Yeah, and it's the first question that we ask as well, because
Mm.
as soon as the officer or the fed reps referred them, when I first make that initial call, it's like, what's your support system? Who have you got round you? How are they being supported? And it's like, well, they're not. They've got their mum or their, yeah, but you understand this is a whole big line of people asking questions. So it's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that they've got some support as well, you know, and sometimes it is something lovely and nice for them to do. So lots of amazing people out there that do, you know, yoga classes, Pilates
Yeah.
classes, and again, anxiety classes, all, you know, breathing techniques, videos, and those things do help. And every little bit helps to just allow people to have a moment, so that when they are feeling stressed and anxious, they know where they can turn to. It's such a big minefield, isn't it? And it's so difficult to say, what would this one thing change? I don't think any one thing is going to change it. I think it's definitely people stepping up and stepping forward and saying, I can help,
Yeah.
I can do this, or I can point you in the right direction. But whatever happens, if that family is supported, that officer, the weight's lifted off of their shoulders, because they have to still go to work unless they're suspended. If they're suspended, sometimes that's worse. Their whole coping mechanism of being at work and being able to take their mind off it and just get their head down and get on has been taken away. They're thrown into the very environment which they're struggling to be in at home, because everybody's on edge.
But it's a loss of identity as well. If you're removed, it is quite tribal, really, especially if you start to sort of specialise and you work in smaller groups, and then all of a sudden you're removed from that group. It's that you know, loss of identity. You don't feel the belonging, and that sort of compounds of guilt and all the other bits and pieces that are going on.
It's awful, and that is almost the worst thing, because I know that the majority of people I speak to feel so bad, you know, I'm not doing this, I can't do this, I can't provide for this person, I can't. It's like, but that's not necessarily their fault, and they are just walking around with this guilt all the time. And often they don't need to be off work, you know, and often they're signed off work because they just can't cope with it anymore, which is even more sad, you know. Which is good that they've reached out, but hopefully early intervention will stop that.
And that is a key message: getting in there early. And you know, I mean, I know you've done your mental health first aid course.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say the same for you. What you're doing, even by, you know, reaching as many people as we can with the mental health first aid course, just raises an awareness. And it's not a case of, you know, you want, which I fully understand, people that want to help, people that want to learn. But there's a lot of people out there in this job that don't understand mental ill health at all. You know, it really is a kind of, come on, we can do it. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's much higher because you haven't got that like inbuilt. We have within us, you know, we will do things and turn to things that help us to cope. So we've got our inbuilt, you know, flight, freeze response. But we would naturally turn to certain things, you know, like for me, if I feel stressed, I pick up the phone and ring my mum, you know, or a technique or a friend, or pick up a book, or put, you know, whatever it is, you've got this little thing inside you that goes, oh, do this. At the moment, you know, a lot of people, they'll they'll maybe go for a drink after work, or they'll go for a run, or go to the gym, or whatever it is, but they'll be interacting in some way that helps them to feel relief. Sorry, my dog is snoring really loud, by the way, if you can
I
hear
thought
him.
it was cold. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just, thought someone might have taken him in the other room for me, but they haven't. So they'll have this inbuilt way in which that they're working to help them, and they don't have that. So COVID is not helping with that situation. So the stress levels are even higher than they normally are. And what can you do about that? Like, again, it comes down to the
it's all about education and self-awareness as well. I mean, I was having a conversation with someone earlier on about sort of identifying when you're not feeling right and doing something about it, because we talk about on the courses the stress container. So that stress builds up, and you've got to have those coping mechanisms to reduce the level of stress.
Yeah, I know. And this is the thing. And there are things that you can do. There are sort of techniques and tips and things that you can use daily, and you can implement them in. I mean, I can show you a couple of them, but it's the basis of it all is really that you're allowing yourself to manage it well yourself, so it can. There are certain things you can look at your behavior, look at the way, if something's changing, or that person around you, if they are not behaving in a normal way that you would class as normal with them, what is that, and why is that? And for me, I always have this kind of little checklist in my head, and I think, if I'm really irritable, something's not right, what's different, what have I done that's different? And maybe I haven't slept, or I haven't left the house. I'm always here at the moment. What haven't I done? I haven't had a laugh. I haven't done anything for me. I haven't watched my television programs. I've been fully working, and it's just about then going, right, okay, back to basics, simplify, back to basics. What is it that I enjoy doing? And at the moment it's limited, but there will still be things. Go back. So it's at this moment with COVID, with lockdown, which I think will be easing slightly tonight, it is really about simplifying the things that you do, the things that you think are a bit silly and mundane, even having a bath or a shower, and just nice gentle breathing, things like that are really, really important. Speaking to people, having a laugh, meeting on Zoom, all these things to keep us, because we are a social breed, we need interaction, and there's lots of very lonely people out there.
So putting the sort of professional hat on there then. So one of the things that I want to sort of dispel was the myth around hypnotherapy, because I think as soon as you mention hypnotherapy, everyone sort of thinks about someone walking around the stage acting like a chicken or whatever. So I mean, what got you into hypnotherapy, and how effective is it for what you do?
Yeah, so hypnotherapy is, for me, that was kind of the basis of how I approach a lot of my therapy sessions. It is not, in therapy, it is not going deeply off to sleep and clucking like a chicken and having things implanted into your head, as I know people do think. It's light. And often you can do hypnotherapy with eyes open. It's just a gentle state that you're into. I have to be very careful how I word this, because there'll be lots of people on here that will view it in a different way. But for me, I view it as a way of talking to the subconscious mind, and it's you. We're not talking about you in any different way. It's talking, if I was talking with you, it's talking to the subconscious mind that I often like to call it your little gremlin. It's kind of your, it's the thing that pops up and gives you all that self-doubt and worry, and it's trying to keep you safe and well. This little part, but it's just easing it. So it's gently sort of, I don't know, just changing certain behaviors in a very calm way. But for me, it's not just about that. That's great if you're doing a therapy session with somebody, but sometimes I like to, and you can help at the time, but it's not always about helping them at the time. It's about giving them coping strategies to take home. So yes, hypnotherapy is amazing. It's such a good tool. There's some amazing hypnotherapists on your page, and out there. And it's definitely something that I wouldn't be where I am today without it. but there are other things as well that can be done, you know, EFT or I use TFT, which is thought field therapy, tapping. It's very easy to use. It's been around for thousands of years. You know, it's an ancient Chinese method. You're using it a bit like you're using acupuncture or reflexology. It works on meridian points, but the key here is that this is something they can do themselves at home. So although you can help them in the therapy chair, back at home, if something arises in future, at the time, whatever's happening, give them the control and the power to deal with it. And that's kind of what I like.
I know that was something that Juliet used because she's got a fear of flying, you know, when we could fly.
Yeah.
And that was a tapping. And that was very effective.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
so,
it is.
I mean, I'm conscious that, you know, old Boris is going to be talking if he already.
He'll probably be late. You know what he's like.
Yeah.
All ruffled up.
So, someone coming to you then for help, how can they contact you? What's the best way of them making contact with you and having a chat about what you can offer them? I think you've...
I got you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, got you. You froze on me, and then I probably froze on you. Got you.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that if someone does want to get in touch and just talk about the things that you can offer, you mentioned the anxiety and the sleep side of things, but more importantly, you know, the family and that perspective. How can they get hold of you? What's the best way of?
Website is fine, so they can find me on there, on Facebook as well. So under my name, under Helen Swain Hypnotherapy as well on Facebook. So I'm lots and lots of police officers and families on my friends list. So please feel free to drop me a message. All the contact details on that are on there.
Yeah.
HelenSwain.com for the website. I'm always happy to help. Just advise, really. You know, like I'm not. There's lots and lots of people that offer lots of different things, and that's exactly what we want. It's not all about us thinking or me thinking I've got the answers. I've got some answers to some questions, but if I don't know, I will point them in the right direction. But yeah, I think you know, feel free at any time to put me a message over. I'm more than happy to have a chat. Brilliant. And if there's someone out there that, you know, does want to work together, you know, there's often people that I often do workshops and other people sort of do little guest appearances and stuff and come on and do a class or whatever it is. It's quite nice to pool resources in that way and help some people. And same with you, you know, with your guys.
No, that's fantastic. So what I'm going to close the interview with is what are you most looking forward to post lockdown then?
Oh, that's a question. I really like just picnics, pub gardens. I'd like to say I want to get on the plane and fly somewhere, but I really don't, if I'm honest. I'd quite like to get in the car and drive somewhere and do some camping, which I never thought I'd say, but I'm kind of craving, I don't know, the outside, and I've become used to not seeing people, so I think I'll be happy seeing them at a distance.
Yeah, it's going to be very strange experience.
Yeah, exactly. I can't see myself kind of jumping on the plane and going off to a resort anywhere. So it's just, I think, gentle, nice beers in the garden and things like that. So yeah. How about you?
It's just that contact, getting out there. I mean, we love being by the seaside and walks on the seaside, so it's going to be a case of just getting some sea. I mean, that's fantastic therapy. Just being by the seaside.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's just it's being able to get outside, being able to just feel a bit freer. At the moment, we're all kind of jumping out of each other's way, aren't we? We're very aware, and it's not always as relaxing, but still think, get yourself outside, get some grounding, take your shoes and socks off when it's not so cold. Yeah, cuddle your animals.
Yeah, well, it's just been fantastic catching up. I mean, I know, we've worked together for a long time with the welfare support stuff, and I know you come from that sort of background, so it's been brilliant catching up. But if there's anything you need from the group, and just stick it on there, and if I can't help, I'm sure there'll be other people on that group who can sort of put you in the right direction. And I can only apologise for anyone who's been watching the Facebook Live, but I've not been able to see any questions or anyone coming up, so I'm going to have to go back and see what's going on regarding that, but it will be sort of posted on the group anyway.
And if there are any questions, because I do have a tendency to talk a bit, you know what I like. If I have gone off in a tangent and there are any questions that people do want that they think would be actually useful for others to know, I'll keep an eye on this thread. And just answer anything underneath, or do a video or whatever.
Yeah, if anyone gets in touch, and I'll point them in your direction over. I'm sure this is the first of many. I think I quite like this idea of having a chat, because there's only so much stuff you can put in the post.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it's quite nice to get to know people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, virtual coffee morning, Wednesday, 10 a.m.
Oh, I'm on the way to Lincoln for just a jab. Yeah, I'm the only person who's driving 3.5 hours in one direction, quick jab, and 3.5 hours home.
I'll let you know how it goes on then.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. I'll be there for the next one.
Right. Well, I'll let you go and have your chat with Boris, and I'll catch up with you later.
All right. Thanks, Lobby. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.